We also introduced some lighter numbers in the Great Caruso, including this one, which also became a million seller for me. When you are in love, it's the loveliest night of the year. Stars twinkle above, and you almost can touch them from here. Words fall into rhyme anytime you are holding me near. When you are in love, it's the loveliest night of the year. Waltzing along in the blue like a breeze drifting over the sand, thrilled by the wonder of you and the wonderful touch of your hand. And my heart starts to beat like a child when a birthday is near. So kiss me, my sweet, it's the loveliest night of the year. Thank you. Thank you very much. I believe that the audience tonight is every bit as enthusiastic and as wonderful an audience as Mario had in February of 1948. It's a pleasure to be here. Now, after the Great Caruso, we embarked on a nationwide concert tour to promote the film, and everywhere we went, we were met by huge mobs of fans. And, well, the kids, they would tear off my clothes and pull my hair. Girls would climb the fire escapes in the hotel where Betty and I were staying, trying to get into my room. And it was so crazy, I began to think, like, maybe this is a time I should take up those opera offers and maybe move to Italy, the land of my ancestors. And I thought that now that I'd had this great success, that MGM would let me do what I wanted, that I could do more serious films about opera, maybe even an entire opera itself. But unfortunately, Louis B. Mayer, who was my mentor, had been replaced at MGM by a man named Dor Shardy, who I just could not stand. We didn't like each other from the get-go. And Dor had in mind that I was going to sing this trite little picture called Because You're Mine, about this army kid who's always doing KP duty, and he could sing, and I just didn't like it. I felt it was an insult to my talent and my singing. And well, finally I did arrange with the director to allow that my actual parents would stand in one of the scenes with me. That was really the best part for me. And my good friend Nicholas Brodsky also, well, he wrote a fabulous song that was a title song for the film. Because you're mine, the brightest I see, my love looks down and envies me. Because you're mine, because you're mine, because you're mine, the breeze that hurries by becomes a melody, and why? Because you're mine, because you're mine. I only know for as long as I may live, I only live for the kiss that you alone may give me. And when we kiss, that isn't thunder here, it's only my poor heart you hear, and it's applause because you're mine. Thank you. Well, the studio agreed to let me fatten myself up again to record the music for the next project, something called The Student Prince. I was very excited about this because I thought this is exactly what I wanted to do. I went into the studio and I recorded all the music for the soundtrack, and then I went also to RCA Victor Studios, and we made a record album of the same music to be released when the film was released. I was very excited about this. Things were going extremely well. The conductor was excited about my singing. It looked very promising, but I began to have trouble with the director of the film because he wanted me to portray the prince as a very reserved, stiff, cold Austrian nobleman. And I thought, he's a young guy, he's a student, he's in love, he's passionate, and I wanted to play with a lot of energy, and we just had a lot of run-ins about that. And I tried to be cooperative. I tried to kind of sneak in my ideas, but he always shot me down. But the final straw came when he said my singing of the music was too passionate, and he wanted me to re-record several of the big numbers. I stormed off the set. MGM sued me for breach of contract. And after a long hiatus, finally, through a lot of negotiations, we reached an agreement whereby I would allow the studio to use my pre-recorded tracks, and at a later time, some other actor could portray the role in my stead, lip-syncing to my singing voice. Now, as it turned out, when the film was released, it was a financial failure, and MGM fired Dorshare, much to my great satisfaction. And when RCA Victor released the album, it very quickly went to over 1 million in sales. This was the first time a classical album had ever sold over 1 million copies. And the reason was, it had just lots of great music. Down where the Neckar flows swiftly along, nestles a town that is famous in song. Laughing lads roam through its streets so quaint. No one's a sinner, much less a saint. Twilight comes streaming while the moonlight shines down, painting with silver on the Heidelberg town. Hark how the echoes are ringing with their song. Laughing they circle their glasses all night long. Golden days and the sunshine of a happy youth. Golden days full of innocence and full of truth. In our hearts we remember them all as above. The golden days, days of youth and love. How we laughed with a gaiety that had no sting. Looking back, the memories haze. We will know life has nothing sweeter than its springtime. Golden days when we're young. Golden days. And this great song. Drink, 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 two eyes that are bright as stars when they're shining on me. Drink, 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 two lips that are red and sweet as a fruit on the tree. Here's a hope that those bright eyes will shine lovingly, longingly soon into mine. May those lips that are red and sweet tonight with joy my own lips meet. Drink, drink, let the toast start. May young hearts never part. Drink, 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 let every true lover salute his sweetheart. Drink, 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 two arms that are white and warm as a rose in the sun. Drink, 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 two hearts that will love one only when I am the one. Here's a hope that let those soft arms so twine. Ah, may she give me a priceless boon, her love beneath a sweet May moon. Drink, drink, let the toast start. May young hearts never part. Drink, 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 let every true lover salute his sweetheart. Let's drink. Thank you. Thank you. You all must be getting thirsty. Well, because of the problems that I had with the student prince, Hollywood thought I was washed up. You know, I'd said things like, you know, the studio was going to see what it was like dealing with a really difficult star, and the press wrote that Lanza thinks he's bigger than the whole studio. And, you know, Hollywood is not very forgiving. And my contract forbade me to sing concerts, opera, radio, television, to make movies, to make recordings. So I didn't know what to do, and I was developing a lot of financial problems. I owed the IRS over $250,000 in back taxes, and finally I was just so discouraged I retreated down to Palm Springs into a rented house and brought my family with me, and I spent time, well, drinking and eating and feeling sorry for myself and tearing up the furniture, and you know, it was really a bad period, and everyone was worried about me. The people said I had lost my voice as well, and gradually I began to think, this is not good. I began to pull myself back together. And some of my old friends like George London came in to cheer me up. And Nicholas Brodsky was working to get me back on track. And, well, word got around that Lanza was able to sing again. And I was invited to appear on a television program called The Shower of Stars. And the most requested piece that people wanted to hear me sing was this number. Someday you will seek me and find me. Someday of the days that shall be, surely you will come and remind me of a love that is calling for you and for me. You remember that one? And from that same musical, The Vagabond King, this great tune. Oh, you beggars of Paris town, you lousy rabble of low degree, spare King Louis to keep his crown and save our city from Burgundy, our city from Burgundy. We are good for nothing but to die. We can die for liberty. Sons of toil and danger, will you serve a stranger and bow down to Burgundy? Sons of shame and sorrow, will you cheer tomorrow for the crown of Burgundy? Onward, onward, swords against the foe. Forward, forward, the lily banners go. Sons of France around us, break the chains that bind us, and to hell with Burgundy. Onward, onward, swords against the foe. Forward, forward, the lily banners go. Sons of France around us, break the chains that bound us, and to hell with Burgundy. Thank you. We both thank you. Well, that television appearance, it erased all the doubts and questions in people's mind, and I was invited by Warner Brothers to do a film called Serenade. It was very successful. It had lots of great opera scenes in it. In fact, I did a couple of scenes from Otello with the great Italian soprano Lucia Albanese. And while I was on the set, I met a lot of luminaries like Renata Tebaldi came, and it was really a great feast of singing. But during this period, because of all of my financial problems, I had a visit at my home from the underworld character Lucky Luciano. And Lucky came by and he offered to help me out with my financial difficulties and said they would take over managing my career and they would, of course, take a percentage of it. I thanked him for his interest and concern, but I didn't want to have anything to do with him. You see, when I was a boy in Philadelphia, one of my uncles was gunned down in the streets in South Philadelphia, right in front of my eyes, for getting mixed up with these kinds of people. And all of my life, they tried to take advantage of my talent and popularity, but I would never have anything to do with them. And so I decided that there were just too many pressures in Hollywood, and so I packed up my lovely family, my wife and my 4 children, and we traveled to New York. And in New York, we boarded the ocean liner Giulio Cesare, and we sailed across the Atlantic to the sunny land of my ancestors, Italy. 11 days later, we arrived to great fanfare at the port of Naples, and then we moved across to Rome and set up housekeeping at the Villa Bordoglio, and I began working right away on my next film project.
E giudicio parto ad io, a te allontano lassù cuore, la sta terra dell'amore, tieni o cuore in una torna, ma non me lasciò, non darne stu torniento, torna sorriendo a me compagna.
Thank you. Thank you. I was very happy to be in Italy. I felt I could finally breathe again. I was happy here and at peace. I began working right away on a film project, something called The 7 Hills of Rome, which is a beautiful pictorial film about the historical and tourist favorite sites all across that great city. And my producer and co-star, Renato Rochelle, well, he is also a musician, and he had written a fabulous song which we introduced in this picture, and it became an immediate worldwide hit.
Arrivederci Roma, goodbye, goodbye to Rome, city of a million moonlit places, city of a million warm embraces, where I found the one in all the faces, far from home. Arrivederci Roma, it's time for us to part. Save the wedding bells for my returning. Keep my lover's arms outstretched and yearning. Please be sure the flame of love keeps burning in your heart. Arrivederci, hello. ne sagliette, tu sai e do, tu sai e do. Addosso con ingrato chi rispiette, almeno un po', almeno un po'. Addollo foche coce ma si fuie, e là si sta, e là si sta. E non decori e priesse, non destruie, tu lo guarda, guarda. Yamma, yamman, coppa, yamma, ya. Yamma, yamman, coppa, yamma, ya. Funicole, funicola, funicole, funicola. A coppa, yamma, ya. Funicoli, funicola. Yamma, yamman, coppa, yamma, ya. Yamma, yamman, coppa, yamma, ya. Funicoli, funicola, funicoli, funicola. A coppa, yamma, ya. Funicoli, funicola.
We're going to take you on tour. You're fantastic. Well, in order to fulfill one of my dreams to do more concerts, I visited Great Britain, where I sang a concert at Royal Albert Hall for 10,000 people, which was recorded by RCA Victor, and I also got to meet the Queen of England. That's so exciting. A young kid from South Philadelphia meets the Queen of England. And then we embarked on a European concert tour. I went to Scotland and to Ireland and Holland and Belgium and Wales, France, and Germany. I did 22 concerts, and many more were scheduled, but I was suffering from a couple of ailments, and I fell so ill that I had to return to Rome to my villa to rest and recuperate. My doctor told me I was suffering from extremely high blood pressure and from phlebitis and a host of other ailments, and he said I really needed to rest, get myself back in shape. And I know I also needed to start working on my next film project, something called For the First Time. I really liked this picture, and it had this great tune.
La notte come allora magica scende, la luna splende e tu sei qui. Mi sento un po' confuso, non so capire e ti so dire solo così. For the first time, I'm in love. For the first time, I know happiness. You're the rainbow in the sky of a new day. All the clouds have now gone by, so that's why I say, for the first time, now I know that in sharing love we're touched with heaven's glow. What a feeling I'm feeling for the first time, it is true, come prima, for the first time I'm in love.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, during the filming of this picture, which took place up and down the Amalfi Coast and the Isle of Capri and, of course, in Rome, some of the scenes had to be filmed on the stage of the Rome Opera House. And they were so impressed by what they saw and heard, because the rumor was that I had a made-up voice and it was created in the studio and I couldn't really sing. But that wasn't really the case. I knew that, and people who knew me, like my agent, John Coast, who managed people like Mario Delmonico and Richard Tucker and John Vickers and Giuseppe Di Stefano and UC Bierling, he felt that my natural voice was greater than all of them. But he was concerned about the way I took care of my health and my lack of discipline and my constant weight problems and tendency to to drink too much, even when the doctor told me not to. But I always showed up for my work on the films, and very seldom did I ever cancel a concert. So Rome was confident, and they offered me to sing Pagliacci. And then offers were coming in from Naples and La Scala Milan, and from overseas tours, the recordings of complete operas. And there was another film project coming up as well, something called Laugh, Clown, Laugh. I was very excited about this because it was kind of based on the Pagliacci story. Now here in Rome, again, I was visited in my villa by Lucky Luciano again. You see, he had this idea, he wanted me to sing on a charity fundraising concert in Naples, co-sponsored by him and the USO. I was very uncomfortable about this, and I felt that was a very strange arrangement. I don't know how he pulled it off, but it was a legitimate concert, and finally he persuaded me it would be a good idea to do it. Betty was furious with me. She said, "Mario, how could you do such a thing? You always promised you would never have anything to do with these people." And I said, "Betty, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay." In fact, I wanted to begin working on the new film, and I told her that I was going to start getting myself in shape. Well, they had scheduled a rehearsal a few days before the concert, and I went downtown with all the good intentions that I was going to go to the rehearsal, but I went early. I went for lunch, and then I started having vino, and I met my friends. We started singing and playing cards, and then went out to play bocce ball, and pretty soon the whole day went by, and I forgot all about the rehearsal. Later that night, two hoods came to my villa to warn me, "You better show up for the concert if you know what's good for you." And I told them what they could do with themselves, and I kicked them out. But I was concerned. I knew this was serious. And Betty was angry at me for being involved in it anyway. But I told her, "Look, Betty, it's going to be okay. Everything's under control." And you know, Betty, I'm still not feeling very well. That bout I had with the phlebitis and the other health issues, I think I need to check into the clinic in town. And they have a new weight loss program, a twilight sleep weight loss program, something brand new. And I really was excited about it. And I wanted to trim down before we started shooting for the next film. So I checked in to the Clinica Valle Giulia there in Rome. And as it turned out, it was the same time the concert was taking place in Naples. So I missed the concert. I'm sure Lucky Luciano was none too happy about that. My doctor told me that it was okay if I talked on the phone and if I sang, but it was very important that every day I stay in bed and not get out because of the phlebitis. So I remember I would be on the phone talking to Betty and the children and making jokes, sometimes arguing and whatever, what a married couple does. And I call my parents in the United States frequently and my grandpa. And then I began to think, I'm Mario Lanza. No one's going to tell me to stay in bed if I don't want to. And it's easier to sing if I stand up. I'm tired of singing laying in bed. I did keep my voice up and I sang for the staff, but I thought I need some activity. So I got up and I went across the room. They had a nice couch there and there was a newspaper there. I wanted to read the newspaper and get out of bed. A short while later, a nurse came in and found me. And an alarm went off, and the doctors came in. And on Friday, October the 7th, 1959 at noon, the great voice of Mario Lanza was stilled forever.
Perché mi dicesi parole amare, perché mi parli e cuore me a turmiente Catarì, non te scurda che t'aggio date o cuore Catarì, non te scurda. Catarì che viene a ricere, su parla con me, e la spase me. in chains.